Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, my name is Tori and today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts with you guys on the Chronicles of Narnia books, specifically book 1, The Magician's Nephew, and book 2, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And this review is for the Worldhoppers Secret Santa gift exchange. And Worldhoppers is this amazing collaborative group of science fiction and fantasy booktubers. And some Worldhoppers are participating in a gift exchange, but instead of like a physical actual present, our gift to our fellow Worldhopper is to read and review one of their favorite books. And so for the exchange, I pulled Michael from the channel Michael Nip, and I did so much research and so much like channel sleuthing to figure out which books Michael really enjoyed, and I just had so much fun browsing through his channel and just watching his content. It's seriously amazing. And through all that research, I found out that Michael really loves the Chronicles of Narnia series. Specifically, he talked a lot about how transformative The Magician's Nephew was when he read it for the first time. He has this great video on his channel about the Chronicles of Narnia called Narnia and Me, which I highly recommend you watch. In that video, he was talking about just how he came into the Chronicles of Narnia. He talked a lot about the relationship that C.S. Lewis had with J.R.R. Tolkien, and it's such a good video. And he goes through each of the books and just what they're about, what they mean to him, and how they really affected him growing up. And I love watching that video. And just on a broader note, Michael's channel, he has talked about how, with Booktube, he's fallen back in love with reading, and he just wants to kind of spread that on his channel. And he's also really into adult fantasy novels, and his reviews are just always so in-depth and so passionate. So you definitely have to go watch him, go subscribe. So I hope today I can do these books justice talking about them. I'm gonna dive into them and let's get started. So before I get into The Magician's Nephew, though, I do want to talk about just my own experience with the Chronicles of Narnia, because I feel like more so than other book series, that's important. I don't know why, because Chronicles of Narnia is just so iconic. It's this huge phenomenon, and I think just the way people approach this series it's fascinating, and just what it means to them and the impact that it's had on them. So my knowledge of the Chronicles of Narnia was just kind of basic, like the lowest level of basic pretty much. I had never read the books before, and I was just vaguely familiar with the adaptations that have come out over the years. But the story is so iconic, it's so ingrained in our culture that it's just hard not to know anything about the Chronicles of Narnia, even like on a bare bones level. So my bare bones understanding of it was that these 4 kids stumble upon some wardrobe, they venture into it, and then when they come out, they're in this new world called Narnia. I knew there was a talking lion, and I knew Tilda Swinton was the witch. And that was pretty much it. That's kind of how I came into The Magician's Nephew, book 1. And I will point out, so I have the entire box set of the Chronicles of Narnia, and in my box set, it's in chronological order, like I think most of the books are at this point. And chronological order puts The Magician's Nephew first. But in publication order, I've learned this is a very serious debate among some people about what is the correct order of the series. So in publication order though, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is actually book 1, and The Magician's Nephew is book 6. So depending on your take, I either read books 1 and 2 or books 1 and 6. But coming into the series with that kind of minimal knowledge that I had of just the foundational plot of the story, I think that just made me enjoy it so much more. I don't know, there's something about this series that I just really fell in love with while I was reading it. So even though The Magician's Nephew is book 1 in chronological order and book 6 in publication order, this book really does read like a prequel. At the start of this book, Narnia has not even been created yet. It's just very much ground zero, and we're just really getting the backstory of these characters and how they came to Narnia for the first time and how the world came to be, essentially. So in The Magician's Nephew, we're following 2 main characters, 2 children, Polly and Diggory, and they just begin exploring Diggory's house together, and he lives with his aunt and uncle. And so as they're exploring the house, they learn that Diggory's uncle thinks that he's like this really grand magician, and so you find out that Diggory's uncle has actually created these rings, and one ring will transport you to another world, and another ring will bring you back from that world. And so Diggory's uncle kind of manipulates Polly into putting on one of these rings, and Polly vanishes, And Diggory, not really knowing what else to do, not really having any other choice, he goes after her. And so the two of them end up in kind of this world in between worlds where there are like all these different portals into like just dozens and dozens of different places. And so really the first place that they venture to is this really desolate and ruined world known as Sharn. And when they get there, they find this witch. And I'm telling you, when I got to that part in the story, I seriously said out loud, I was like, oh my God, I think it's Tilda Swinton. So they find this witch and they accidentally bring her back with them into our world, the real world. And from there, they end up using the rings again and they venture into what will become Narnia. And we meet the lion Aslan, and he creates Narnia by singing, and he just starts assigning these roles to different people. We get, you know, a king and a queen. The animals of Narnia have their own job, and the queen, now taken from her old world and placed in Narnia, she is then banished to like the north of Narnia pretty much. And that's really book one in a nutshell. We have this really close relationship between Diggory and Polly, these really just imaginative and daring kids, not afraid of exploration, which was just so fun to read about. And towards the end of the book, we kind of get this nice little wrap up of how things progressed in Narnia over the years, how Diggory and Polly grew up. And that's pretty much it. And the end of this book is just a really nice, I think, setup into The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I will say though, if you do end up reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, there are just some noticeable continuity errors in this story because it's assumed that this is the story that you read first. So if it's not, then there are just going to be some like lines of dialogue that just don't really make sense, because I remember distinctly there is a line in here about the lion Aslan, and the narration assumes that we haven't met him yet. But if you've read The Magician's Nephew, you already know who like Aslan is. So it's just like little things like that. But I mean, The Magician's Nephew, this was great. I love this story so much. Just from the first page, I was just in love with the storytelling style. It's very whimsical. It feels very much like a fairy tale. And Michael even mentioned in his video that C.S. Lewis was inspired by these kind of fairy tale themes, and that's more what he was going for, more so than like having the book be allegorical, because there is a lot of discussion surrounding the fact that, you know, the Chronicles of Narnia feels like there are a lot of religious undertones to it. But I think you can choose to look at it like that, but I mean also it seriously just feels like a nice little fairy tale. There are just some really, you know, black and white themes in here about, you know, good and evil, about morality, about, you know, bravery in children, about deceit, things like that. There's like a kind of snarky writing style that C.S. Lewis has. There are a lot of times where C.S. Lewis breaks the prose in the story to foreshadow something or to kind of like make this witty remark about something that the characters did or something that the characters are experiencing, which I thought was really great. So I mean, this is just, I can't believe how short these are. I wasn't really expecting that, but I mean, it's just such a compact and just fun, digestible story. So that brings me to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I think, regardless of your familiarity with the Chronicles of Narnia, this is the story that most of us have heard to some extent. So The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it takes place many, many, many years after The Magician's Nephew. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but I feel like a lot of people might already have read this series before, but I don't want to say too much. But the wardrobe itself, you know, it comes from something that happens at the end of this book. So that's just, I think, a nice little setup in itself. And so we finally meet the four children, Lucy, Edmund, Susan, and Peter. And the four of them have to flee London and go to the countryside because it's World War II and there are air raids happening, and they just have to get away from the danger of the city. So they go stay. I don't want to give away too much, but like, it's such an old series. And so the four of them go stay at this professor's house. I don't want to spoil who the professor is, but they go stay at the professor's house, and the professor has the wardrobe that appears, you know, at the end of The Magician's Nephew. And again, classic tale of Lucy is the one who ventures through the wardrobe first, and she enters Narnia. She meets the fawn and then comes back, and nobody believes like that she went anywhere. And so finally, a few days later, once all the kids finally get into Narnia, this is where the real action kicks off, and you find out that the fawn has been kidnapped by the White Witch from the first book, and just things in Narnia aren't good. The witch has really assumed control over everything, and there's just this blanket of despair and darkness that just kind of hangs over Narnia, and even Aslan himself needs help at this point. So everything kind of falls on these 4 children to step up and be brave and pretty much help save Narnia. So I think that's The Magician's Nephew and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of in a nutshell. Just overall my thoughts on these books. I'm just so happy that I finally got to experience this series. And there are just a lot of books out there I think I would have appreciated more reading as a child, and then some books I haven't even read yet that I think I would have liked to have read as a child. But as I was reading through these 2 books, there is seriously something about this series where reading it as an adult just makes it feel a little bit more magical, and I can't really explain that any better than that. Even the dedication in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I've seen variations of this quote in so many different places. That iconic line that's like, you know, one day you'll be old enough to read fairy tales again. And it comes from here. C.S. Lewis was actually writing the dedication to his goddaughter and remarking on how she might be too old to read this book, but one day she'll be old enough to return to this world and hopefully appreciate it. I really did love both of these. They just feel like these effortless, kind of comforting, cozy winter reads almost. They're just full of so much whimsy and magic, and I don't know, I love it. I even love C.S. Lewis's writing style because it, like I mentioned, it is really snarky, and I think it's written in a style that like adults can appreciate. I actually did laugh out loud a couple of times in The Magician's Nephew just because of some of the things that, some of the kind of off prose remarks that C.S. Lewis was making throughout the story. So I can understand why this is such an iconic and just classic series. I am excited to continue on with this series. I really want to know where it goes. I don't think we're going to be following the 4 children from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the other books, but I'm just curious to see how everything plays out. So I'm so happy I read these. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I thought they were just the epitome of magic and just an ultimate commentary on good trying to triumph over evil. Michael, I really love this. So that's it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on the Chronicles of Narnia, the reading order if you have a preference over that, and just what you think of the series as a whole. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.